Phoebe the Fashion Fairy. Rainbow Magic. The Party Fairies. Daisy Meadows. Rainbow Magic. The Party Fairies. Phoebe the Fashion Fairy can't rustle up a pretty outfit without her magic party bag of sparkly frocks. Can Rachel and Kirsty help her get it back in time for their friend's party? There's a magic party bag in each Rainbow Magic story. Help the girls to find them all and keep them safe for the fairies. Rainbow Magic, the Party Fairies. Phoebe the Fashion Fairy. Here's our map, the invitation, and the contents. Birthday trouble. Kirsty Tate and Rachel Walker were busy wrapping a birthday present for Kirsty's friend Charlotte. There, said Kirsty, tying a ribbon. Charlotte's going to love the silver hairband. It's so pretty. Are you nearly ready, girls? Mrs. Tate called up the stairs. Dad and I have to leave in 2 minutes. Just coming, Mum, Kirsty replied. Then she turned to Rachel. Can't believe we're going to another party, can you? Grinned Rachel. She grinned. Rachel shook her head. I wonder what's going to happen this time, she said excitedly. The two girls shared a secret. They were friends with the fairies, and while Rachel had been staying with Kirsty's family the girls had been helping the party fairies of Fairyland. Grumpy Jack Frost had sent his goblin servant into the world to cause trouble at human parties. When a party fairy arrived to put things right, a goblin would try to steal her magical party bag and take it back to Jack Frost. Rachel and Kirsty had been helping the fairies keep their party bag safe, which meant that all the parties that week had been extra specially exciting. Kirsty and Rachel put the party dresses into a bag with Charlotte's present, then rushed downstairs. Kirsty's parents had to go out that afternoon, so Mrs. Tate had arranged for the girls to go to Charlotte's house a little early. We met nearly all the party fairies now, Kirsty said as she and Rachel walked along the road. Rachel counted them off on her fingers. Cherry the Cake Fairy, Melody the Music Fairy, Grace the Glitter Fairy, Honey the Sweet Fairy, and Polly the Party Fun Fairy, she said. So the only two we haven't met are Phoebe the Fashion Fairy and Jasmine the Present Fairy, Kirsty put in. I wonder if we'll see one of them today. Rachel couldn't help smiling as they walked up Charlotte's front path. I expect so, she said. Those goblins won't be able to resist another chance to try and get a magical party bag. One of them is bound to cause trouble, and then Phoebe or Jasmine will have to come and see things and set things right. The girls knew that Jack Frost had sent his goblins to steal the party bags because he wanted to use fairy magic at a party of his own. It was to rival the Fairy King and Queen Surprise Jubilee Party, which had been organised by the fairy godmother for the end of the week. Kirsty and Rachel had both been invited to the Jubilee celebration as special guests. They were determined to make sure that Jack Frost and his goblins didn't spoil everything by stealing the party fairies' party magic. Kirsty rang the doorbell, and a few moments later, Charlotte answered the door. Happy birthday! Cried Kirsty and Rachel together. But then Kirsty noticed how sad her friend was looking. Is everything all right? She asked in concern. Charlotte looks so upset. She actually looks a bit like Kirsty. Charlotte didn't seem to be in a birthday mood. She wasn't wearing a party dress. She wasn't even smiling. No, she wailed. Everything is not all right. My best dress has been ruined. Ruined? Rachel echoed. How? Charlotte held the front door open. Come upstairs and see, she said miserably. Kirsty and Rachel gasped when they saw Charlotte's white and gold party dress hanging on her wardrobe door. It had a messy splotch of what looked like green paint all over it. Oh no! Kirsty gasped. How did that happen? Charlotte looked close to tears. I don't know, she said. This morning it was perfectly clean. Oh no, her dress! Charlotte's mum, Ingle, came in. Her mouth fell open when she saw Charlotte's spoiled dress. Charlotte! She exclaimed. You haven't been painting in your best dress, have you? No! Charlotte cried. I just came upstairs and found it like this. Mrs. Ingle frowned. I hope your brother hasn't had anything to do with it, she said, and marched over to open the window. Well, she called down the garden, come here at once. Charlotte's little brother Will scampered into the bedroom. A few moments later, he was covered in mud and looking very pleased with himself. I found loads of worms, he told the girls happily, brandishing a small muddy spade. Will, your sister's party is soon, Miss Ingalls groaned. You were supposed to be getting ready. Will glanced over at Charlotte. Well, Charlotte isn't ready yet. And it's her party, he protested. Speaking of which, Mrs. Ingalls went on, do you know anything about this? She showed Will Charlotte's party dress, and he shook his head vigorously. I've been in the garden all morning, he insisted. Charlotte nodded. It's true, Mum, she said. I saw him. Mrs. Ingalls sighed. Well, I suppose the dress must have been brushed against something, she said, looking baffled. Rachel and Kirsty glanced around the room uneasily. They were both wondering if the dress really had been brushed against something, or if somebody had ruined it deliberately. Both girls knew it was just the sort of thing a goblin would do, and the green paint on the dress was an unmistakable goblin green. Rachel caught Kirsty's eye and realized that they were both thinking the same thing. A goblin must be hiding somewhere very nearby. Now this is chapter 2, Hide and Seek. Mrs. Ingalls looked at her watch. We've got 1 hour before the party starts, she said. We could pop round to the dry cleaners and see if they can help, but I've still got the fairy cakes to ice. I don't know how I'll get everything done in time. We'll ice the cakes for you while you're out, Kirsty suggested cheerfully. Yes, Rachel put in. We're good at icing, she added, remembering the icing they'd made at Kirsty's birthday party. Mrs. Ingalls smiled. That's very kind of you girls, she said. Are you sure you wouldn't mind? Of course not. It will be fun, Kirsty replied at once. Mrs. Ingalls led the girls downstairs. Then, when Mrs. Ingalls whisked Will away to get him cleaned up, Mrs. Ingalls took Rachel and Kirsty into the dining room, where the party food had all been laid out on the table. 1 tray of fairy cakes, 1 bowl of icing, a piping bag, and some cake decorations, she said, setting them out. This is really helpful, girls. Thank you. Then Charlotte and her mum hurried off to the dry cleaners with Charlotte's ruined dress. As soon as Kirsty and Rachel heard Mrs. Ingalls' car leave the driveway, they looked at each other meaningfully. We've got to find that goblin, Kirsty said in a low voice, before he does anything else to spoil the party. Well, he must have been in Charlotte's bedroom not so long ago. Let's go back up and see if he'll still be there, Rachel suggested. The girls made their way upstairs to Charlotte's room. Kirsty put her finger to her lips, then crept up to the wardrobe and flung the door wide open. Rachel's heart was pounding as she and Kirsty peeped inside. Jack Frost goblins were very sneaky. You could never tell where they were going to pop up. But there was no sign of the goblin in Charlotte's wardrobe, so Kirsty peered under the bed while Rachel kept behind the curtains. Then Rachel looked beneath Charlotte's duvet, and Kirsty checked on top of all the cupboards. Either he's hiding somewhere really, really clever, or he's left the room, Kirsty said at last. Rachel sighed. He couldn't be anywhere in the house by now, she said. Just waiting to cause more trouble. Kirsty glanced at her watch. Come on, we'd better get on with those cakes, she said. Otherwise we'll be the ones spoiling Charlotte's party. Downstairs, Kirsty and Rachel began icing the cakes, trying to think where the goblin might be hiding. Kirsty piped heart shapes on each cake, while Rachel decorated them with hundreds and thousands. Rachel was just finishing the last cake when Kirsty nudged her. Look, she urged. Rachel looked up to see a stream of tiny sparkly red hearts floating past the window. The girls both ran over to take a closer look. There, waving at them through the glass, was a beautiful smiling fairy. This is chapter 3, Goblin Attack. Oh, and there's Phoebe. It's Phoebe the fashion fairy, Rachel cried, opening the window for her. Phoebe had long, wavy blonde hair held back by a crimson Alice band. She wore a little white dress with a row of red hearts around the hem and matching shoes. Yep, that's what she looks like. Her scarlet wand had a ruby heart at one end that glittered in the sunlight. She fluttered inside and perched on the windowsill. Hello, she said in a bright silvery voice. Kirsty and Rachel, isn't it? I remember seeing you when Honey the Sweet Fairy showed you around the Party Fairy workshop. That's right, Kirsty said. And I remember your gorgeous fashion department with all those wonderful sparkly fairy dresses. Phoebe nodded and then looked serious. Now, I heard that there was a party dress disaster here, so I've come to work a little bit of fairy magic and sort everything out. Well, we're very glad to see you, Kirsty said, and quickly filled Phoebe in on what happened to Charlotte's dress. Phoebe's delicate features creased into a frown. That does sound like goblin mischief, she agreed. We'll have to be careful. We'll just clear these icing things away, Rachel said, and then we'll show you where Charlotte's bedroom is. Kirsty arranged the fairy cakes on the plate while she started gathering up the icing equipment. Phoebe fluttered over for a closer look at the cakes. Cherry the cake fairy would be proud of you too, she said, admiringly hovering over the table in midair. These look good enough for the king and queen of fairyland themselves. Rachel was frowning. Where's the icing bag? She asked Kirsty. I can't see it anywhere. Kirsty looked around. It was there a moment ago, she said, pointing to one end of the table. I know, Rachel agreed, sounding puzzled, but it's vanished. No sooner had she said these words that the lid of Will's toy box flew back with a loud crash. The girls and Phoebe spun around to see a goblin bursting out of the toy chest like a grinning green jack-in-the-box. He actually looks funny. It's the goblin! Kirsty cried. With the piping bag, Rachel added. The goblin held up the piping bag and squeezed it hard. A jet of icing shot out and hit Phoebe right in the tummy. Help! She cried in surprise, tumbling backwards. Kirsty and Rachel watched in horror as Phoebe fell. Luckily, she landed in the big soft red jelly in the middle of the table and then bounced up in the air again, arms failing as she tried to recover her balance. Squelch! Back in the jelly, Phoebe plunged. She was quite unhurt, but this time she lost her grip on her magical party bag and it flew across the table. Just what I was after, the goblin chortled, leaping out of the toy box. Rachel gasped. Oh, no, you don't, she cried, dashing around the table to try and reach the party bag before the goblin could take it. But she was too late, and the goblin's gnarly green hands closed around Phoebe's shimmering party bag seconds before Rachel could get to it. Nobody home. The goblin grinned nastily and snatched up a fairy cake in his other hand and leaped out of the window into the garden. Oh no, Phoebe gasped, struggling out of the sticky jelly. I need my party bag or I won't be able to fix Charlotte's dress. And we all know what the goblin will do with it, Kirsty groaned. He'll give it to horrible Jack Frost for his party. You can't let that happen, Phoebe said firmly, brushing pieces of jelly from her dress. She waved her wand. Sparkling red hearts streamed from the tip and spilled all over Kirsty and Rachel. I'll make you fairy-sized, she said. Then we can all fly after that goblin thief. Kirsty and Rachel shut their eyes in delight as Phoebe's magic got to work, and they felt themselves shrinking. Beautiful shimmering fairy wings appeared on their backs, and Rachel couldn't resist, flying a little loop-de-loop. It was so much fun to be able to fly. Phoebe fluttered out of the window, and the girls followed. They could see the goblin running down the garden greedily, stuffing the fairy cakes into his mouth as he went. He glanced over his shoulder and spotted the three fairies zooming after him. A look of panic crossed his face, and he glanced around wildly, searching for somewhere to hide. The next moment, he spotted the Wendy house at the bottom of the garden and charged towards it, diving inside and slamming the door. Phoebe was first to reach the Wendy house. She knocked loudly on the door. Let me in, she ordered crossly. There's nobody home, called the goblin from inside. Phoebe sighed and tried to pull the door open, but the goblin must have been holding tight to the handle on the other side, for it didn't move. It's no good, but I'm not strong enough, Phoebe wailed. If you turn us back into girls, we might be able to do it, Kirsty suggested. Good idea, Phoebe said, waving her wand again to release another scream of red hearts. Kirsty and Rachel felt their arms and legs tingle with fairy magic as they grew back to their normal size. Right, Rachel said, grabbing hold of the door handle. Let's get this door open. There was a scraping sound from inside the Wendy house, and then, to Rachel's dismay, she found that she couldn't even turn the handle. The goblin must have wedged something under the door handle, she cried in frustration. A chair or something? It wouldn't budge at all now. Phoebe groaned. What are we going to do? She asked anxiously. Kirsty looked around desperately, trying to think. Seeing the cake crumbs on that goblin had dropped on the grass gave her an idea. Obviously, the goblin liked the cakes, she said, and she and Rachel had decorated. Perhaps we could tempt him out with some more. She whispered her idea to Phoebe and Rachel. They both nodded approvingly. Goblins always want to get their hands on more cakes, Phoebe laughed. It's a brilliant idea. She turned back towards the Ingle's house and waved her wand with an expert flourish. Kirsty and Rachel watched in delight as a stream of twinkling red hearts shot straight from Phoebe's wand into Charlotte's house. A moment later, something very strange happened. "Aren't those what I think they are?" Kirsty asked, staring. "Flying fairy cakes," Rachel gasped. A small procession of cakes was whizzing through the air towards the Wendy house in a neat V formation. Kirsty's spirits rose as she saw the goblin peering curiously out of one of the Wendy house windows. He licked his lips when he saw the flying cakes. "He's seen them," she hissed, crossing her fingers. The fairy cakes landed neatly on the Wendy house windowsill and then started dancing around right under the goblin's nose. "He looks tempted," Rachel whispered, hopefully. The goblin had his face pressed up against the glass eagerly, but then he caught sight of the girls peeping at him, and a demanded expression came over his face. "If you think I'm coming out for a few measly cakes, you got another think coming," he yelled, folding his arms stubbornly. "I know it's a trick, and I'm staying here." Rachel sighed. She'd been sure the greedy goblin wouldn't be able to resist more cakes. Then she glanced down at her watch and gulped. "Oh no! We've only got 10 minutes before Charlotte's party starts," she cried. Kirsty looked at her in horror. "Charlotte and Mum will be back any second," she exclaimed. "We've got to get that goblin out right now." A wave of inspiration. Kirsty, Rachel, and Phoebe stared around the garden, wondering what to try next. Rachel spotted the garden hose, and her eyes lit up as a thought popped into her head. "How about this?" she asked the other two. "We put the end of the hose down the chimney, turn the tap on, and flood that nasty goblin out of the Wendy house." Kirsty chuckled. "I love it," she said. Phoebe was smiling too. "The goblins don't like water, and they hate getting cold, wet feet," she added. "If anything's going to get him out of there, a cold shower will." Quickly, Kirsty dangled the end of the hosepipe down the Wendy house. Chimney while Rachel ran to turn on the outside tap. A few moments later, there came a great splash, quickly followed by a surprised yelp from the goblin. "Where's that rain coming from?" he grumbled. "I'm getting wet." "Come out then," Phoebe called. "It's lovely and dry out here." There's the goblin. More water splashed into the Wendy house, and the goblin's moan got louder. "Now my feet are wet," he groaned. "Ugh, horrible cold water. Make it stop." "We'll make it stop if you come out and give Phoebe her party bag," Kirsty offered. "Shan't!" the goblin retorted rudely. This party bag is mine now, and I'm going to give it to Jack Frost." Well, you can't say we didn't warn you, goblin," Rachel shouted, racing over to turn the tap on fully. "Here comes the flood!" Water poured into the Wendy house in torrents. Through the window, the girls and Phoebe could see the goblin bobbing helplessly around the water level as the water level rose. Then he floated against the small chair he used to wedge the door shut. The chair was knocked aside, and the Wendy house door flew open. "Help!" cried the goblin, as a huge wave of water gushed out of the Wendy house door, carrying him along on top of it. "I didn't know goblins could surf," Kirsty laughed, as he sailed past her. She stretched out an arm and snatched Phoebe's party bag from his hand. Got it, she declared. Yay, she got the party bag. Happily passing the bag to Phoebe. The goblin shrieked and flapped about in the river of water, trying to get his feet, but it was impossible. The rushing stream carried him all the way down the garden to the pond. Splosh! Into the pond went the goblin. Oh no, there's a goblin. He looks really tiny. Oh, and there's Phoebe. Kirsty, Rachel, and Phoebe couldn't help laughing as they watched the goblin clamber out, dripping wet and with a huge clump of duckweed plastered to his head. He looked very sorry for himself. I'm almost tempted to magic him a special outfit, Phoebe chuckled. Some swimming trunks, the goggles, and nice flowery swimming hat. Squelch, squelch, squelch. The goblin stomped away defeated. I think that's the last we'll see of our soggy friend today, Kirsty said with a grin. Rachel ran to turn the tap off and then waved frantically at Phoebe and Kirsty. Mrs. Ingle's back with Charlotte, she hissed. I just heard the car. Kirsty's face fell. Not only was the garden a mud bath now, but the Wendy house was a mess. The big red jelly was ruined, and she and Rachel were all wet too. How on earth were they going to explain everything to Mrs. Ingle? Oh no, what's going to happen? Leave it to me, Phoebe said quickly. You keep Charlotte's mum talking. I'll fix the Wendy house and then the dining room. Now, hurry. Kirsty and Rachel ran into the house to find poor Charlotte looking more upset than ever. The cleaner said they'd never seen anything like this paint, she explained sadly. They tried all sorts of things to get it off my dress, but nothing would shift it. Mrs. Ingalls put a comforting arm around her daughter. Never mind, she said. You've got lots of other nice things to wear. You'll just have to choose something else. She glanced over at Kirsty and Rachel as Charlotte began to trudge upstairs. And you two should change too, Mrs. Ingalls went on. The party's going to start any minute. A puzzled frown appeared between her eyebrows as she took Rachel and Kirsty's damp clothes. You look rather wet. Are you all right? She asked. Kirsty began, not sure how to explain her bedraggled appearance. We're fine, Rachel put in hastily. We just got a bit splashed when we were washing the icing things. That's all. Ooh, so Rachel and Kirsty don't want to tell them about what happened. That's okay. They're the only ones that know about fairies, not anyone else. Mrs. Inglis' frown cleared. I completely forgot about the fairy cakes, she said. Did you get them all finished? She walked towards the dining room. Well, Rachel mumbled, crossing her fingers as she followed Mrs. Inglis into the room. Could Phoebe possibly had time to magic the Wendy house back to normal and sort out the dining room? Hopefully she managed. A dress to impress. Kirsty and Rachel shouldn't have worried. Clever Phoebe had worked wonders. The fairy cakes were neatly arranged on the plates once more, and the jelly was its perfect wobbly self again. Nobody would ever have dreamed that a party fairy had fallen into it just 20 minutes ago. Kirsty blinked as she noticed a tiny glimmer of sparkly red light flicker around the table and then vanish quickly. She turned to Rachel questioningly, and Rachel nodded. She had seen it too, a last sparkle of fairy magic. Luckily, Mrs. Ingalls had noticed no such thing. She was too busy admiring the fairy cakes. You are clever girls, she said. I couldn't have decorated them more beautifully myself. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Kirsty said, smiling with relief. Now, we'd better go and get changed. Just then, there was an excited cry from upstairs. Kirsty? Rachel, come quickly! Kirsty and Rachel rushed upstairs to Charlotte's room. To their amazement, hanging on the wardrobe door were 3 gorgeous party dresses. One was a beautiful deep red, all covered in golden hearts, with a matching hairband, a tag hanging from the sheet saying Charlotte, in pretty sparkling writing. The other 2 dresses had tags that read Kirsty and Rachel. Kirsty's dress was a pink, with a lilac dragonfly embroidered near the hem, and Rachel's dress was lilac with pink butterflies around the neckline. This is the most beautiful dress ever, Charlotte breathed, stroking the shimmering red material. But where did it come from? Oh, those are lovely dresses. Whoa, and the sleeves are awesome. Oh, and there's a really cute teddy bear. Rachel opened her mouth, but couldn't think of a single thing to say. How could they explain that the 3 outfits were fairy gifts by Phoebe the fashion fairy? Happy birthday, Charlotte, Kirsty cried, thinking quickly. It's our present to you. We went and got them while you were out, just in case the cleaners couldn't fix your dress. And here's a little something else as well, Rachel added, pulling the present they wrapped up earlier out of the bag. Happy birthday! Oh, thank you, Charlotte cried happily, hugging both girls. As Charlotte started to open the presents, Kirsty suddenly nudged Rachel. Rachel turned to see what her friend had spotted. To her delight, the dragonfly and butterflies on her party dress were fluttering their delicate embroidered wings and twinkling with golden lights. She grinned at Kirsty. They were both going to be wearing magical dresses. Charlotte was pulling off the last bit of wrapping paper. What a gorgeous necklace, she exclaimed, holding it up. I love it. Kirsty and Rachel stared. The silver headband they wrapped up for Charlotte back at Kirsty's house had been turned into a gleaming gold necklace with 3 heart-shaped red beads strung in the middle. Phoebe's work again, no doubt, Kirsty thought, smiling. Charlotte put on her dress, Rachel fastened the necklace around her neck. I must go and show Mum, Charlotte said, twirling around happily. Thank you so much. This is turning out to be the best birthday I've ever had. As soon as Charlotte had left the room, Phoebe peeped out from behind the curtain with a smile. She waved her wand, and Kirsty and Rachel suddenly found themselves wearing their new party dresses, while their old clothes were neatly folded in a pile on the bed. Oh, Phoebe, these dresses are just gorgeous, Kirsty declared, standing in front of the mirror. Thank you. I feel like a fairy all over again wearing this, Rachel added, dancing around in her new dress. Phoebe's cheeks blushed pink. Oh, it's nothing, she said, looking terribly pleased. I'm just doing my job. Happy to help. Then she smiled. Anyway, I should be thanking you for saving my party bag from the goblin. Oh, it's nothing, Kirsty grinned. Happy to help, Rachel laughed. Just doing our job, they chorused. Phoebe came over and hugged them. Aww. Have a lovely party, she said. I must fly back to Fairyland now. Kirsty and Rachel waved goodbye as Phoebe disappeared in the swirl of glittering fairy dust. Then the doorbell rang downstairs. Charlotte's friends are here, Kirsty said happily. Let's go and have some fun. I think we've earned it today. We certainly have, Rachel agreed. And I can't wait for our next adventure. Cherry, Melody, Grace, Honey, Polly and Phoebe have got their magic party bags back. Now, Rachel and Kirsty must help Jasmine the present fairy. Oh, and just to say, Jasmine the present fairy is right here. Thank you so much for watching me and listening to me read Phoebe the Fashion Fairy. Bye. Oh, and also tomorrow is going to be it's going to be Jasmine the Present Fairy. The last fairy from the Party Fairy series I'm going to read tomorrow. Stay tuned for her. Bye.